Have you ever wondered why certain people judged by ordinary moral standards would be called cold, selfish, unkind, even frightening, yet they rise absurdly high inside society? Why they don't live righteously, don't stay gentle, don't stay humble, don't strain to be good, yet money still flows toward them, power still consolidates around them, and the moment they enter a room, the air tilts in their direction. Meanwhile, so many good people, genuinely good, live their entire lives from a position of weakness. They do the right thing, speak the truth, keep their ethics, treat people well, and still get outpaced, exploited, replaced, pushed out of a game whose rules they don't even realize exist. Machiavelli saw this more than 500 years ago, and he didn't look away. He didn't try to fix human beings into becoming better. He did one thing correctly: he dissected the anatomy of power. The first truth, the first blade, is this: success in the human world is not decided by whether you are good or bad. It is decided by whether you understand human beings. And this is where most people fail. People are trained to believe kindness will be returned with kindness, honesty will be respected, humility will be lifted up, morality will protect you from betrayal. Those beliefs don't exist by accident. They are necessary to maintain order for the majority. A society where everyone sees the raw mechanics of power collapses quickly. So, most people must be raised on beautiful stories. But beautiful stories don't produce winners. They produce obedience. Machiavelli did not stand on the side of good or evil. He stood on the side of reality. And reality shows something hard to swallow. Those who possess a dark personality often carry an unfair advantage in the arenas of power, money, and influence, not because they are evil, but because they are not chained by the moral illusions other people carry. Dark personality is not madness, criminality, or cinematic insanity. In the language of power, it means something else entirely. It is a personality that does not need to be loved, does not need recognition, does not need to be understood, and does not need forgiveness. They do not anchor their value in other people's emotions, and because of that, they cannot be governed through emotion. Most people, by contrast, are bound by a deep fear, the fear of being disliked. That fear makes them talk too much, explain what doesn't need explaining, apologize when they aren't wrong, yield when they should hold position, and delay action because they're terrified of losing an image. Machiavelli treated that as a fatal weakness. He wrote without poetry and without comfort that people do not act because something is right, but because of benefit and fear. Whoever understands that first controls the game. The dark personality begins with the courage to stare at that truth instead of escaping into moral performance. A person with a dark personality does not hypnotize themselves with people will be fair. They understand fairness is a story told after the winner finishes writing the rules. They do not believe everyone is good if treated well. They understand most people are good when it's profitable, and they change faces when conditions change. They do not believe in permanent loyalty. They believe in incentives managed correctly. And because of that, they aren't shocked by betrayal. They priced it in. Most people collapse not because the blow is too strong, but because the blow comes from where they least expect it: friends, colleagues, family, even the people they once helped. Machiavelli called that the cost of naivety. The dark personality doesn't whine about that reality. It learns from it. You can hate Machiavelli for this, but you can't deny history. In politics, business, finance, and social life, the people who climb highest are rarely the purest. They are the ones who understand human beings the deepest. They know when to stay silent. They know when to go cold. They know when to retreat. And most importantly, they know when not to trust. That is why dark personality predicts success better than morality or raw intelligence alone. Not because the world celebrates evil, but because the world runs on instinct, leverage, and interest, not on your moral wishes. Machiavelli isn't telling you to become a monster. He is warning you, if you keep living as if human beings are purely rational and reliably kind, you will remain in a passive position. And the passive are always written by the active. What you've just seen isn't meant to make you strong instantly. It's meant to break the most dangerous fog, the false belief that success comes from being a good person. In the real world, success comes from understanding people before trying to please them. And from here, an even larger lie begins to surface. A lie that has kept millions living their entire lives in a weak position without understanding why. That will be the next layer to peel. If there is one lie massive enough to shape the lives of billions, it is this: if you live correctly, the world will treat you correctly. It sounds beautiful, moral, reassuring, and that is exactly why it is the most sophisticated trap society has ever built. Machiavelli does not reject morality. He rejects the fantasy that morality is the operating system of power. Because if you observe long enough, cold enough, honest enough, you discover an unpleasant truth. The world does not reward the right. It rewards the one who understands the rules of the game. Two people with equal talent, two people with equal effort, two people with the same starting point. One believes if I do the right thing, speak the truth, live decently, results will arrive. The other understands timing, position, silence, and concealment matter more than righteousness. Who goes farther? History has answered that question too many times for it to be called coincidence. Society must plant in the majority the belief that good wins, not because it always does, but because if people see the truth too early, the system loses control. The overly awake are hard to steer. Those who can read power are hard to govern. So people are taught from childhood to share, to be humble, to tell the truth, to open up, to be agreeable. Those lessons are not wrong. They are simply only safe in an ideal world, not the real one. When an adult walks into a power arena carrying a child's moral rulebook, they do not become noble. They become vulnerable. Machiavelli called them good people being consumed, not because they are unlucky, but because they failed to update the rules. This is where dark personality begins to form. It is not born from cruelty. It is born from perception, from the moment someone realizes the most dangerous thing in life is not being hated, but being read too easily. Good people are usually predictable. They react when provoked. They explain when misunderstood. They apologize to keep peace. They yield to avoid conflict. Each of those behaviors accidentally broadcasts a signal: I can be controlled. The dark personality does the opposite. It doesn't rush to react. It watches longer than necessary. It lets the other person speak more. It doesn't feel obligated to prove innocence, correctness, or kindness. It understands a cold law. Power doesn't come from how good you are. It comes from how difficult you are to manipulate. Society worships sincerity, but power runs on information control. Society praises openness, but the one who survives longest is the one who knows how to keep things sealed. Society says, be yourself. Machiavelli understood the real equation. People are not respected for essence. They are respected for position. The dark personality knows identity is not for display. It is for calibration, concealed when needed, revealed when advantageous, protected when timing isn't ripe. Many failures in life don't come from incompetence. They come from speaking too early, exposing too fast, and placing trust where it hasn't been earned. Machiavelli would call that strategic suicide. The dark personality doesn't allow that naivety to live. It learns deliberate silence, strategic endurance, and hardness when the moment arrives. More importantly, it doesn't chase validation. It chases position. And once position rises high enough, your behavior is automatically interpreted differently. Same action at a low position, you're called a problem. At a high position, you're called strong. This is the truth Machiavelli refuses to hide, because hiding it only grinds more people inside moral illusion. From here, the question is no longer, is dark personality right? But what is it made of? How does it operate? And why does it become an advantage in power, money, and influence? Next, we go into the structure itself, not with slogans or vague philosophy, but with the mechanisms that keep some people ahead while the majority keeps circling for answers. There is a truth few people dare to face. What makes most people fail is not a lack of morality, but a misunderstanding of their own nature. Society prefers to believe humans are rational creatures, that they think before acting, that decisions come from values and principles, and right versus wrong. Machiavelli treated that as one of the most dangerous illusions ever planted into the crowd. Reality runs in reverse. People act first, then search for reasons to justify what they did. They love, hate, trust, betray, stay loyal, or turn away not because of logic, but because of deeper instinct, interest, fear, desire, and social position. Reason shows up afterward to narrate the story in a prettier frame. The dark personality appears exactly here. It doesn't try to become better. It tries to see more clearly. A person with a dark personality does not soothe themselves with people don't mean to hurt me. They understand most people don't think about you nearly as much as you imagine. They are reacting to protect their own position. When interests align, they call it friendship. When interests collide, they call it misunderstanding. The naive call that betrayal. The Machiavellian calls it law. Deeper still, dark personality forces you to face another discomfort. You are not different from them. You also move by interest. You also avoid fear. You also have desires that, if exposed, would collapse your good person image. The difference between the strong and the weak isn't whose instincts are darker. It's who admits them earlier. Machiavelli didn't hate human instinct. He hated hypocrisy, the condition where people act on instinct, deny it, and still believe they are more virtuous than others. That contradiction makes them easy to manipulate. If you refuse to look at your own darkness, it will control you. If you stare straight at it, you begin to control yourself. Dark personality doesn't make you worse. It makes you stop being naive about the so-called good nature of human beings. When you stop believing people act from right and wrong, you start observing differently. You track behavior instead of words. You follow incentive flows instead of promises. You read shifts in tone before they become actions. And that creates a strategic edge. You no longer put yourself in a position where you must trust. You no longer put yourself in a position where you must hope. You no longer need other people to keep their word for you to be safe. You prepare for the worst case, not because you are pessimistic, but because you respect reality. That's why dark personality predicts success better than optimism or blind faith. It doesn't give you supernatural power. It gives you the ability to stay standing when others collapse from disappointment. People who don't understand this ask, why are you always guarded? Those who understand Machiavelli simply smile. They know the biggest collapse doesn't come from enemies, but from placing trust in the wrong place. And from here, Another question emerges: if humans move mainly by instinct and interest, what keeps some people in the driver's seat while others are led? The answer is in how they use fear, not their own fear, but other people's fear. That's where the story continues. Most people carry a dangerous misunderstanding their entire lives. They believe personality is fixed, that you live as you are born, that if you aren't cold, sharp, calculating, you shouldn't and can't become that. Machiavelli would smile at that, because, to him, personality is not essence. Personality is a tool, and tools are forged, not prayed for. Dark personality isn't an inborn trait reserved for a small evil minority. It's the result of a very specific sequence of perceptual adjustments anyone can make. But few dare, because the first price is losing the comforting image of being a good person. The core difference between someone with dark personality and someone without it is simple: their relationship with emotion. The average person lets emotion drive. The dark personality puts emotion in the passenger seat, not because they don't feel, but because they don't grant emotion decision rights. When provoked, the average person reacts to release pressure. The dark personality stays silent to collect data. When insulted, the average person wants justice. The dark personality wants to know who did it, why they did it, and when retaliation produces maximum leverage. This isn't cruelty. It is internal discipline. Machiavelli understood the moment you react emotionally. You hand control to someone else. You become predictable. And in every power game, what is predictable is what gets exploited. The dark personality trains a capacity society, never teaches the ability to endure your own silence. Endure, not replying immediately. Endure, not explaining. Endure being misunderstood in the short term to win in the long term. Most people fail not because they are weak, but because they can't tolerate being misread. They rush to clarify, rush to defend, rush to repair their image, and that haste leaks position, piece by piece. Dark personality accepts being disliked, accepts suspicion, even accepts isolation for a period, because it knows this authority is not built on affection, but on consistency and immovability. Another foundation Machiavelli would recognize is the ability to separate ego from outcome. The average person ties self-worth to other people's reactions. Praise makes them confident. Criticism collapses them. Recognition inflates them. Being ignored destabilizes them. Dark personality refuses that frame. It measures itself by something else. Do I still retain choice? If you can still choose silence or speech, advance or retreat, sever or preserve, you remain the active party, regardless of temporary emotion. That's why dark personality is often mistaken for coldness, numbness, even inhumanity. Machiavelli doesn't care what people call you. He cares about one question: who is still standing at the end? This world isn't designed to protect the overly open. It protects those who understand boundaries, those who know not everyone deserves your truth, your plans, your fears, or your real desires. Dark personality builds layers, a layer of social behavior that is just enough, a layer of strategic silence, and a decision core that almost no one touches, not for pointless manipulation but for survival, advancement, and preserving autonomy in a world that constantly tries to drain it. When you understand personality isn't who you are, but how you are allowed to appear depending on context, you cross a crucial threshold. From there, life stops pushing you around. You begin placing yourself where leverage lives. And that is only the foundation. In the next part, we go into why dark personality doesn't just help someone survive, it makes them hard to replace, hard to remove, and slowly turns them into the center around which decisions must rotate. When dark personality forms deeply enough, an effect appears, and this is where most people don't realize they're standing at a turning point. Your value in other people's eyes begins to change, even if you don't do anything different. Not because you speak more, not because you seem smarter, but because you become hard to read, hard to predict, hard to replace. Machiavelli understood that within any power structure, the most dangerous person isn't the strongest, but the one who cannot be labeled quickly. When others can't tell what you think, want, or fear, they must be cautious. And caution is the earliest form of respect. Dark personality doesn't try to impress. It does something subtler. It creates cognitive vacuum. That vacuum forces others to guess, and when humans lack information, they fill gaps with fear. Worst-case assumptions, exaggeration. That process elevates your position without you lifting yourself. That's why dark personality individuals get described as having aura, presence, something you can't name. There's nothing supernatural there. They simply don't rush to expose their internal map. Machiavelli watched this phenomenon closely. The easier you are to understand, the easier you are to use, the easier you are to predict, the easier you are to control. And inversely, those who keep depth unshared are often given larger roles, not because they're better, but because no one dares to underestimate them. Dark personality also changes your relationship with failure. The average person fails and asks, "What's wrong with me?" The dark personality asks, "What structure made me lose?" That difference matters. If every outcome is proof of your worth, you imprison yourself in shame. If every outcome is feedback about the game, you keep a cold mind and adjust strategy. Machiavelli didn't worship the individual. He worshipped context, timing, and force alignment. Dark personality learns to scan context before revealing character. It doesn't ask, "What do I want to do?" It asks, "What produces the most advantageous end state?" That mindset carries people far in environments where others break quickly: politics, business, institutional hierarchies, any system where emotion is the biggest trap. Another trait is misunderstood. Dark personality doesn't hate people. It just refuses to idealize them. It doesn't expect unconditional loyalty. It doesn't gamble survival on promises. It doesn't build strategy on hoping others will be kind. And precisely because it expects less, it is rarely destroyed by betrayal. When betrayal happens, and Machiavelli assumes it always will, it isn't shocked. It records and recalibrates. This is a massive psychological advantage society doesn't teach, because it clashes with surface morality. But Machiavelli never wrote for the crowd. He wrote for those who intend to survive longer than crowd ethics. Dark personality also frees you from a common fear: abandonment. When you no longer depend on being accepted, you no longer need to keep a performance that pleases everyone. You choose relationships through strategic value and mutual respect, not through the hunger to be liked. And the paradox appears: the less you need others, the more others come looking for you. Not because they love you, because they sense you don't need them. And in every power game, what doesn't need sits above. At this level, dark personality stops being a type and becomes an internal operating system, a way of seeing life without naivety, without paranoia, cold enough not to be swallowed, clear enough not to self-destruct. From here on, the question isn't, does dark personality help you succeed? But do you have the discipline to live with it? Because the deeper you go, the price is no longer the good person image, it's solitude, extended silence, and full responsibility for your decisions. Very few people go that far. Next, we touch an even deeper layer: why dark personality doesn't just predict success, it decides who can keep success when the world starts turning its back. Machiavelli understood something most people refuse to face. Achieving success is not as difficult as keeping it when conditions change. At that point, dark personality isn't an advantage, it becomes survival. Most people fail, not while climbing, but while being watched. When you have nothing, the world ignores you. When you gain position, money, influence, the gaze shifts instantly. Old words get dug up. Small actions get magnified. Supporters begin measuring. Machiavelli called this the moment Fortuna turns her face, not because you are wrong, but because you have become visible. Dark personality prepares you for that moment early. The one without it believes, if I do the right thing, I'll be protected. The one with it understands, the more right I am, the more I must protect myself. The difference is that they don't build a career on moral image. They build it on adaptability when that image is attacked. One of the most common errors of the successful is starting to believe their own story. Too much praise, too much validation. They become fragile against opposition. Dark personality doesn't allow that. Not from insecurity, from separation. They do not fuse identity with current role. They know roles are temporary masks granted by context. When context changes, the mask must change. Those who can't change get removed. Machiavelli warned a prince must never let himself be locked into a single quality. Good, evil, hard, soft tools, not identity. Dark personality runs on that principle. It keeps you from reacting too early under attack, from justifying when misunderstood, from rushing to repair image while image is being tested. Because emotional reaction reveals weakness, and weakness in power environments is an invitation to escalation. The one without dark personality asks, how do I make them understand me? The one with it asks, who benefits from them misunderstanding me? That second question reveals the entire power map behind a conflict. Keeping success requires swallowing a hard truth. Not every battle must be won, but every battle must be watched. Dark personality doesn't make you aggressive, it makes you selective, and it teaches when silence forces the opponent to expose themselves. At this stage, silence stops being defense. It becomes indirect offense. When you don't react, others react for you. When you don't explain, others interpret for you. And the more they interpret, the more they reveal motive, fear, and their real position inside the structure. Machiavelli called this letting the opponent talk too much. Dark personality gives you the coldness not to interrupt that exposure with emotion. Another essential point: dark personality breaks the illusion of stability. Those without it chase safety, clarity, stability, confirmation. Machiavelli treated stability as dangerous because it makes people fall asleep. Dark personality keeps you alert enough, not panicked. Never complacent. You don't live in fear, but you don't live inside the fantasy that everything will be fine. That is why you outlast people who are more talented, more moral, and more naive. Then a final paradox appears. Dark personality doesn't strip your humanity, it forces you to take full responsibility for it. You can't blame circumstances. You can't hide behind collective ethics. You can't pretend you didn't know. Every decision becomes conscious choice. And the cost: solitude, misunderstanding, being disliked, is paid in advance inside your own mind. That's why few people reach the end of this road, not because it's too cruel, but because it does not permit self-deception. And here the question becomes sharper than ever: is dark personality merely a survival tool? Or is it the foundation of a kind of freedom the majority will never touch? Next, we step further, where dark personality stops revolving around external power and collides directly with inner freedom and the real cost of belonging to no one. If you go far enough with dark personality, a subtle internal movement begins, and this is where many people turn away. Because from here on, external power stops being the center. A harder question rises: are you becoming freer or merely replacing one dependency with another? More refined dependency. Machiavelli never spoke of freedom romantically. To him, freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It is not being forced to do what you don't want. And dark personality, properly understood, is the tool that gets you there. When you no longer need to be liked, you can't be controlled through approval. When you no longer need to be understood, you can't be trapped into explaining. When you no longer need to be defended, you don't have to play the victim. At this level, dark personality doesn't pressure others. It dissolves the pressure others once had over you. But the cost of this freedom is not light. A person no longer bound by collective emotion becomes separated from the collective, not from contempt, from mismatch. Your rhythm stops syncing with the crowd's psychological needs. You don't react as fast as they want. You don't share as they expect. You don't rise and fall on the same emotional cycle. Distance forms. Machiavelli understood the more independent a ruler's decisions, the more solitary his thought. He didn't treat solitude as tragedy. He treated it as the price of not being manipulated. At the deepest layer, dark personality isn't cold toward the world. It is ruthless honesty toward yourself. You stop blaming others for your feelings. You stop using circumstance as an excuse for choice. You stop needing someone to understand you to feel comfortable. Comfort gets replaced by something else: clarity. Clarity about limits. Clarity about motives. Clarity about the price of each path. And when that clarity appears, another paradox follows you. Begin treating others more humanely, not from morality, but because you no longer need anything from them. Dark personality doesn't force cruelty. It removes the naivety that gets you wounded repeatedly. Once you aren't guided by blind hope, you can choose kindness, but it will be conditional, bounded, and deliberate. This is where Machiavelli is most misunderstood. He doesn't advocate evil. He refuses to teach people to live inside the illusion that the world will be fair to goodness. If dark personality isn't anchored by internal discipline, it slides into extreme suspicion. But if held correctly, it becomes psychological immunity, letting you touch life without being devoured by it. At this level, you stop asking, "How do I become more successful?" You ask, "What am I trading to keep this success?" Only the awake can face that question without running. Machiavelli would call this the moment a true leader is born, not the one applauded, but the one who can endure the silence after the lights go out, still standing without clapping, without crowds, without external confirmation. Here, dark personality no longer predicts success. It filters who has the spine to live with success without losing themselves. And then you meet a final truth. Simple and hard. The greatest power isn't controlling others. It's that no one can control you anymore, not even your own fear. Next, we close this journey with the most important question: is dark personality the only road, or merely a necessary phase, before a mature human being steps into a higher form of freedom? At this stage, one last misconception must be stripped away, because if it isn't, everything you built collapses from inside. The illusion is that dark personality is the destination. It isn't. It's a door. Machiavelli never taught people to live forever in the dark. He taught them to enter the dark when necessary and to exit at the right time. Because someone who stays too long in defense mode starts reading everything through threat. Power then deforms into paranoia. Clarity dries into sterility. Autonomy hardens into isolation. This is the split between those who use dark personality as a tool and those who get consumed by it. Those consumed start believing everyone is plotting. They read motive where none exists. They prepare war for battles that aren't real and become prisoners of what they think they control. The Machiavellian doesn't live in darkness. He moves in and out of it. He uses coldness to decide, then returns to calmness to live. He doesn't let strategy bleed into every relationship. At mature level, dark personality is framed. It is no longer identity. It is operating mode. You don't need to act dangerous to make others cautious. You don't need to hide emotion to prove strength. You don't need cruelty to keep power. Your presence creates the boundary on its own. Machiavelli understood the most durable power doesn't come from fear alone, but from unpredictability fused with inner consistency. People can't manipulate you not because you strike back fast, but because they no longer have a psychological handle. And here, a deeper paradox appears. You begin to live lighter, not because life becomes easy, but because you stop carrying illusions that made you heavy. You don't need to prove you're good, prove you're right, prove you're strong. Those needs were ropes pulling you into other people's power games. Not anymore. When completed correctly, dark personality self-cancels. It finishes its mission and retreats like armor you wear to war, not something you sleep in every night. That's why truly successful people often look ordinary, not flashy, not tense, not performing strength. Inside them, the endless war is gone. They chose position, understand their value, and don't waste energy on constant defense. Machiavelli would call this the stability of the ruler, not because enemies disappear, but because no one remains important enough to qualify as an enemy. And when you reach this point, a new question appears no longer about success or power, but meaning if you've seen through the game. How far will you play it? And for what? In the final part, we put a period on this subject with the hardest question, not for the crowd, but for those who have gone far enough to stop lying to themselves. There is a strange moment most people who go deep into power eventually meet. Not when they get what they want, but when they realize that if they keep moving by old momentum, they will win a game that no longer makes them alive. Machiavelli never wrote for those intoxicated by power for its own sake. He wrote for those forced to understand power so they wouldn't be crushed by it. And once you understand it deeply enough, the question stops being how do I win and becomes do I still need to win? This ending is rare because it doesn't stimulate instinct. It exposes something raw for most of life. People chase success to compensate for early helplessness. Dark personality frees you from helplessness. But if you keep running after you're free, you aren't the master, you're addicted to the sensation of control. Those who truly mature in power begin to slow down, not from weakness, from selectivity. They choose battles, choose relationships, choose where to appear. Most importantly, they choose when not to play. Here, dark personality completes its life cycle. It did its job, helped you see people, read motives, avoid naive traps, hold position. Then it yields to something rarer, inner freedom, the state of a person no longer governed by circumstance. You stop reacting to insult. You stop proving yourself under suspicion. You stop spending energy on people moving in the wrong direction. You are present without display. You control without tightening. You know you can become dangerous, and therefore you no longer need to. This is where real success separates from visible success. Someone may appear less, speak less, do less, yet every step carries weight. Not because they manipulate better, but because they no longer get pulled into other people's games. Machiavelli wouldn't call this morality. He would call it the lucidity of someone who has seen deep enough to stop being deceived by the glamour of power. And if you read this far, you've likely understood dark personality predicts your success, not because it makes you cold. It predicts success because it forces you to face the most real part of you, the part that doesn't need to be liked, praised, or validated to exist. Once that part is seen and placed correctly, it stops governing you. It stands behind you, silent, ready. But it never drives your life instead of you. And that's when you don't just succeed inside the world's game, you begin to exit your dependency on the game. This ending isn't here to close with a triumphant statement. It exists to do something harder, put a mirror in front of you and not let you turn away. If dark personality predicts your success, it isn't because it makes you abnormal. It's because it forces you to stop lying to yourself. Stop believing the world runs on goodwill. Stop believing effort is always rewarded. Stop believing goodness is enough to be safe. Machiavelli doesn't destroy morality. He destroys moral illusion, the illusion that makes people walk into power games bare-handed and call it virtue. Once illusion collapses, you have two choices, bitterness or clarity. Dark personality is only the hammer. It doesn't decide what you build afterward. Those who fail with dark personality become contemptuous of the world. Those who succeed with it become independent of the world's judgment. That difference is life or death. You don't need cruelty to go far, but you need the capacity for cruelty, so you can't be pushed back. You don't need coldness to be strong, but you need the capacity for coldness so you can't be manipulated. You don't need to distrust everything, but you need the ability to see through motive when necessary. When integrated correctly, dark personality doesn't alienate you from people. It makes you more selective with trust, time, and energy. It makes you understand not every relationship must be saved. Not every battle is worth fighting. And not every opportunity is your opportunity. At the final layer, success is no longer a performance. It is the consequence of standing in the right position inside the structure of life. You know where you are. You know whom you are granting leverage to. You know what strengthens you and what makes you leak. Machiavelli won't conclude with moral advice. He leaves a cold, fair truth. The world doesn't reward the good or the bad. It rewards the one who understands the rules earlier and pays less for that understanding. If you read this far, you may no longer belong to the crowd, not because you are superior, but because you accepted looking directly at the uncomfortable face of reality. And from that, you gain a leverage. Very few people dare to hold you, no longer need to live inside a role. Dark personality has finished its task. The rest, how you live, how you use power, who you choose to become is no longer Machiavelli's concern. It is your responsibility.